We're holding them back. We'll wait for you. Alright, so this is the real Fort Foster, not opposed to the shed that we saw over there. Some of the things I like to point out about the original Fort Foster, or the real Fort Foster, excuse me. Notice the blockhouses on both sides. They would have only built 2 blockhouses. One blockhouse could protect 2 walls. So this blockhouse here could protect the south and the east wall and the opposing. One of the other things that's neat to point out around here, all these big trees that are shading us right now would not have been here. A couple of reasons for that. That is made of a lot of wood. Pine, they would have used southern pine back there. Longleaf, all these pine trees would not have been here. And here's a fun fact for you. If you look around all these oak trees out here, less than 170 years old. They would not have been here. One of the other reasons is the officers got to sleep in the officers' quarters over there, the first blockhouse. All the soldiers, the troops would have slept out here. So all the volunteers, all the soldiers, all the troops, a couple of rows of white military tents all the way down. As they're sleeping out here, the Seminoles sleep out here. So in order to kind of counter that, they would clear cut everything for about 3 football fields. What do they do with all that piles and piles of wood after they make the fort? They would have bonfires out here so big it looked like daytime. So there'd be about 6 bonfires running. They would literally just drag chunks of trees over to keep it lit up. So there would have been no trees. The firing line was predominantly what they wanted. You figure back in our youth, we were all pretty quick at one point or another. An angry Seminole could run pretty fast. Their weapons were good for about 50 yards, accurate for 50 yards. It would shoot, some of them would shoot a mile. So they could shoot for more than 1,000 yards away and hope they got lucky. But if they went running, they could get 50 yards pretty quick and then shoot another 50 yards pretty accurate. So they would cut almost 1,000 yards in every direction all the way around the fort to keep a firing lane open so they could see them coming. So join me, we'll go ahead and go on inside. If anybody's feeling frisky, I usually have kids run and push these doors open. They're a lot stronger than we are. We're willing to admit anyway.
That's direction! Oh, I think you're outnumbered. So much for that line! What are you doing on my land?
Just passing through. Everybody in the fort, quit.
Let me give you a holler back. I'm just going into the fort. I'm at Fort Foster. We're on a tour. I'll give you a call back. Okay, good. I'll call you.
We'll have to make room for everybody, so everybody can kind of follow around.
Hey, Rich, we get to take this home.
No, Steve's back. Okay. Oh, this is cool. Look at the cameras.
Firing up was introduced around 1830. It went to a plug open cannon out of Mobile. So yeah, kind of close to about the same time. Yeah, if you guys can follow around, and what we'll do is we'll kind of go through the fort as a group, and then we'll leave it open for a little while if anybody wants to go back through with questions and take pictures and that thing. It's a pretty good sized group, and it's kind of hard for everybody to see everything. So, this is the officers' quarters. The officers' quarters, this is where all the, and I call it the smart guys would have been. These were the guys that all did their homework in school and they got to be an officer. As an officer, you got to do a couple of things. You got to boss everybody else around, which is always fun sometimes. But you also got to sleep inside. So as I told you before, if you were a normal troop, a volunteer, a soldier, infantry, whatever, you would have slept outside. With the mosquitoes, with the rattlesnakes, with the coyotes, the panthers, the bobcats, and the Seminoles. Not a pleasant place to be out there. Some of the things that you'll notice in here, all these holes, they called that air conditioning back then. You'll see some of the windows have these pieces of wood in front of them. I'll show you guys some of that. This is called a heater. When it gets too cold, you put this in the window and this blocks the light. It's your dimmer switch and it's your heater. Keep you from getting too cold, so put that up there. Of course, the electricity. Everything ran on lantern power. Everything ran on candles. They made their own beeswax candles. They would have brought thousands and thousands of candles with them. So here's a predicament. Now with these holes that I've got in my impenetrable fort, I've got all these gaps in here where a Seminole can take pop shots at me. Then I put a candle up at night so they can see how many of me there are, and they can see where I'm moving from my shadows. So they weren't the smartest people in the world back then, but they started thinking. This is a lantern that they would use at night. It's not a bug catcher or whatever, a little critter carrier, but I'm sure all of you at one time or another remember the disco ball, right? Remember the disco light? Well, when I lit this and stuck it in the middle of a room, it made hundreds of little shadows go all over the room. So I could stand here by myself with this, and it would look like there was 20 of me in here. And it was impossible to tell where I was moving around. It created an ambient light. So they weren't smart, but they were getting there.